Hello, everyone, welcome. We've just started the recording and live stream of our event. I want to thank everyone for joining our virtual press conference featuring Utah elected officials and public health experts who have come together today to speak out against the rollback of America's clean car standards during the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to thank Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment for hosting today's event. And I want to run through our agenda very quickly. We're going to have 2 to 3 minutes of formal remarks from each of our speakers who will be visible and audible via their video. Our members of the media, just a reminder, thank you for joining us. You're logged in as attendees, so you'll be muted during the formal remarks and your video is off, but you will be able to see and listen to the speakers. At the end of the formal remarks, we will have a brief Q&A session where members of the media can raise their hand or use the chat function to indicate if they have any questions. I'll facilitate that Q&A section so we can unmute members of the media so they can ask their questions. And with that, I want to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Brian Moench, MD, Board President of Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment. Dr. Moench is going to provide some background about the clean car standards to get us started. Dr. Moench, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Kevin, and good morning. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Dr. Brian Moench, President of Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment. Our group includes about 450 physicians and other healthcare professionals and over 3,000 members of the lay public, and I'm speaking on their behalf this morning. I'm going to give a few opening remarks to provide some context and the reason for our event. While there's no single solution or silver bullet to solving our air pollution problem or the climate crisis, every step we take to extract, process, and burn less fossil fuels is important. But none are more important than what we're going to talk about today. The EPA's clean car standards have been a very effective tool to reduce greenhouse gases, to reduce air pollution, and to stimulate jobs and innovation, and to save consumers money. That's what we might call a rare win-win-win-win program. Now, several panelists are here today to speak out against the EPA's rollback of America's clean car standards by the Trump administration, something that couldn't be defended at any time, but all the more so during the current public health and economic crisis. The clean car standards provide irreplaceable public health protections by reducing community-wide pollution. They literally save lives, create jobs, and save families money at the pump. But on March 31st, despite the exploding pandemic and the grave economic consequences that have followed, EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler, along with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, finalized a rollback of federal clean car standards. Now, this is the second phase of the rollback. The first phase of the rollback was initiated last fall with the White House's attack on the Clean Air Act's provision that grants states the authority to adopt stronger vehicle tailpipe pollution limits than those set by the federal government. 3 other speakers are going to join me now in elaborating on these points. I now want to introduce our first speaker, Representative Stephen Handy, Republican from District 16 and co-chair of the legislature's Clean Air Caucus.
Thank you so much, Brian Moench, and Dr. Moench, and all the rest of you who are joining us today. Representative Harrison and Dr. Mandoza, we have an important message to convey, and we're happy to have this opportunity and the forum to do that. I have, in my short-term time in the legislature, tried to tackle issues surrounding clean air because it's important to my constituency, it's important to my family, it's important to my grandchildren. Here's an interesting little note that Salt Lake City passed its first air quality ordinance in 1891. Now that was a few years before statehood that occurred in 1896. That means that Utah has had air quality legislation on the books for the entire history of the state. Now, Representative Harrison and I were in a press conference last August and spoke about our concern about the EPA rollback. And here we are these months later to address it again. So as we know, clean air not only affects the health of our citizens, It's also a critical element in Utah's economic health and vitality. And I've heard more than one story about a company recruiter to come to Utah, gets off the plane during one of our notorious inversions and says, I don't think so, getting right back on the plane, and that was that. We can't have that happen. Because of our unique geography along our populous Wasatch Front, it's imperative that we not only pursue smart public policy, but with also each Utahn take responsibility, ensuring that they're doing their part. It includes driving clean fuel cars, making shorter trips, transitioning to mass transit, carpooling, and less idling, especially when the air quality is poor. I've been pleased to work on several air quality initiatives during my experience, including the promotion of clean fuel school buses and working to clean up numerous what are called freight locomotive switchers that some of you know about in our rail yards. I haven't been successful because we've been blocked as a state by provisions in the Clean Air Act that doesn't allow a state to have the ability to direct its own future. This is why this recent adjustment by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the EPA is so concerning to me. This would amend certain, as Dr. Moench has said, existing corporate average fuel economy and tailpipe carbon dioxide emission standards and for passenger cars and light trucks, and establish new standards covering those models from 2021 to 2026. My concern is that the revised standards may limit our progress in Utah to reduce greenhouse gases emissions in Utah when we have been making such important strides to come into attainment. Utah's winter and summer air quality challenges will always be with us, and this is not the time to relax those standards, as well as further limit the state of Utah controlling its own destiny. I feel like this may be a step back given the progress we've been making over the past several years, including the introduction of Tier 3 gasoline, although these are separate standards with different aims. But Utahns deserve clean air, and thus the rollback threatens the state's authority to adopt a stronger pollution limits than those set by the federal government, a move that, as I've said, would take away states' rights to protect the health of our own residents. I've been pleased to serve as a co-chair with Representative Harrison that I'm pleased to introduce now of the Clean Air Caucus. We work collaboratively to find reasonable and common sense solutions that are in the best interests of all Utahns, including health, as well as the state's economic vitality. By the way, Representative Harrison and I are co-chairs along with two senators, Escamilla and Weiler, and some additional representatives, Snow, Arendt, and Potter, in addition to the two of us. And we help direct and lead this very, very important public policy discussion. So thank you, and let's turn the time to Representative Harrison.
Thank you so much, Representative Handy, and thank you all who are joining us this morning for this important event. I'm Suzanne Harrison, and I'm proud to represent the people of Sandy, Draper, and White City in the Utah House of Representatives. I serve as co-chair of the legislature's Bipartisan Clean Air Caucus, which works to address our serious air quality problems in a bipartisan way, and I'm honored to serve with Representative Handy and others in this capacity. I'm also a practicing medical doctor, but my most important job and the job I'm most proud of is being a mom to our 3 kids, and they deserve to breathe clean air. Our pollution hurts our families and it directly impacts my patients. I have even had to cancel surgeries for patients whose asthma was aggravated during an inversion and it was unsafe to proceed with their needed surgery. I have constituents that have survived chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and even cancer, but they cannot beat our air pollution. They suffer from serious breathing problems and they're forced to stay home or leave the state in some cases when our air gets bad. As leaders, we owe it to Utah patients and families to work to solve this. We have made significant progress on air quality through legislation in Utah, but our work is far from done. And this rollback of the clean car standards presents a new threat in our efforts to clean up our air. Abandoning the clean car standards will increase pollution, it will hurt our health, it will hurt our wallets, and it will hurt our economy here in Utah. And it's the wrong choice for Utah. We know that respiratory hospital admissions increase with air pollution, and we owe it to the 50,000 children with asthma here in Utah to fight this dangerous rollback that will put dirtier cars on our roads and increase our air pollution. Having cleaner, more efficient cars on the road will save Utah families hundreds of dollars at the gas pump every year and keep that hard-earned money in their wallets where it belongs. Rolling back the clean car standards will also hurt Utah jobs and further hurt our economy. Nationwide, there have been almost 300,000 jobs associated with clean vehicle technologies, and Utah could expect to see as many as 4,700 new jobs in the next decade by protecting the clean car standards. Losing out on this job creating force is the last thing we need in the middle of a recession with record unemployment numbers. As I talk to people in my community in Sandy, they are very concerned about air quality. They want to see progress towards cleaner air, not steps backward that poison our air and our future. I would like to thank Senator Romney and Congressman McAdams for their continued support of the clean car standards. Please keep up your great work. And I urge Senator Lee, Congressman Curtis, Stewart, and Bishop, and elected officials throughout Utah to speak up in support of the clean air and clean car standards. If you're a Utahn who cares about clean air, please call your elected officials and ask them to fight for protecting the clean car standards. Make sure you're registered to vote to have your voice heard on clean air issues and smart policy like protecting the clean car standards. Thank you for joining us today. It's my pleasure to turn the time over to Dr. Daniel Mandoza. He is Research Assistant Professor of Atmospheric Sciences and Visiting Assistant Professor at the University of Utah.
Good morning. Thank you all for attending the event, and thank you, Representative Harrison, for the kind introduction. Through countless research, including much work done right here in Utah, we have found that the populations least responsible for pollution are often the worst affected. Ongoing research is finding that measures to reduce exposure have also yielded disparate results. For example, when Utah enacted the Stay Safe, Stay Home directive in mid-March in an effort to flatten the curve of COVID-19 spread, less wealthy communities experienced a decrease in traffic of around 10 to 20%, while wealthier communities saw a decrease of up to 60% with associated local air quality benefits. This is likely to have been due to the ability of certain communities to telework, while others were forced to physically be present for their jobs. The direct economic impact should not be underestimated. Since the federal clean car standards were implemented, Utah residents have saved $270 million to date, while drivers across the US have saved more than $106 billion and counting. If these money-saving standards remain in place, Utah families would save an average of $3,050 at the gas pump through 2030, in addition to the creation of the aforementioned 4,700 new jobs within the same timeframe. These are non-trivial amounts, particularly during these times of economic uncertainty. Finally, I would like to briefly introduce the impact to national security. Military officials have identified the changing climate to be a threat to troop safety and operations due to elevated temperatures, variation in humidity, and extreme weather events. And nearly 2/3 of US bases face the threat of floods, drought, or wildfires. In summary, this rollback is an abandonment of science, reason, and responsibility at a time when we urgently need sound and informed leadership. It will disproportionately impact vulnerable communities and communities of color who are already suffering from COVID-19 at higher rates and are more likely to live in areas with elevated levels of hazardous air pollution, including areas near high traffic zones and highways. I would now like to turn the conversation over to Dr. Brian Moench.
Thank you, Dr. Mendoza. Dating back to the 1970s, the costs of controlling pollution and cleaning up our air have been one of the best investments companies and the government have ever made. The public health and economic benefits have paid off spectacularly at a rate of about 30 to 1, i.e. $30 of benefit for every dollar spent. They've added millions of clean technology jobs, and literally millions of lives have been saved along the road. and life expectancy for all of us has improved. The steady progression of clean air standards has been one of the most successful and important federal programs in the history of this country and a model for the rest of the world. For several years, air pollution has been consistently in the top 3 issues of concern for Utah voters. All over the world, including the Wasatch Front, air pollution is the #1 environmental cause of community disease and poor health. It is easy for our patients to understand the role that air pollution plays in lung diseases like asthma and COPD and even pneumonia. But air pollution is far more than a problem for our lungs. It contributes to 4 of the 5 leading causes of death, which are lung disease, heart disease, cancer, and strokes. Extrapolating from nationwide studies, Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment estimate that between 1,000 and 2,000 Utah residents die every year due to our air pollution. Air pollution contributes to virtually all the same diseases we know come from smoking cigarettes: high blood pressure, heart attacks, heart failure, and abnormal and dangerous heart rhythms. It contributes to strokes, impaired brain function, and neurologic diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, to impaired fetal development, poor pregnancy outcomes, stillbirths, birth defects, and infant mortality. Air pollution contributes to virtually every type of cancer, especially lung cancer, and even to diseases like type 2 diabetes and arthritis, and increases the severity of infections. Pollution shortens the average person's life expectancy, and in Utah, that probably amounts to around 2 years, even if they never have symptoms from it. Remarkably, we know that air pollution can impair the normal functioning of genes passed down to future generations, harming their health as well. Now, air pollution is a contributor to virtually all of the pre-existing diseases that make COVID-19 more lethal. In fact, a study from Harvard University looking at the population of virtually the entire country has estimated that the average level of air pollution on the Wasatch Front increases the risk of death from the virus about 70%. The Clean Cars Standards has bipartisan support here in Utah from Senator Romney and Representative McAdams. But I echo Representative Harrison in wondering why Senator Lee and Representatives Stewart, Curtis, and Bishop have not joined the effort to reverse this rollback. We need all our state and local elected officials to be on the public side on this issue. 23 states are suing to stop the Trump administration's rollbacks. Regrettably, Utah is not one of those states. Even worse, Utah's Attorney General has, inexplicably, joined the Trump administration's side in a court battle to prevent states like Utah from restoring the Clean Car Standards. That's why I encourage our Attorney General, Sean Reyes, to reverse course and support the state authority element of the Clean Cars rule that could provide an effective option for Utah to reduce our air pollution, to clean our air, and improve our health. There is absolutely no reason why every layer of Utah state government and every Utah elected official shouldn't support reducing pollution from the 1 million vehicles registered in Utah. Now I'd like to turn it over to our administrator, Kevin.
Thank you, Dr. Moench, and thank you to all our speakers. That marks the end of our formal remarks portion of this event. We'll now take a few minutes for Q&A. For members of the media, thank you again for joining us. You can use the raise your hand function to indicate that you have a question, or you can also type it into the chat box and you could just type, I have a question. Or you could even type your question into the chat box and for panelists to see. So the way we're going to do is I'll work our way through the questions. One at a time, we'll unmute your audio so that you can speak. Please, before you start, just state your name, the media outlet you're with, and if you have a specific panelist that you're directing your question to. Okay, let's get started here. Alexis Pinero of KSL.
Actually, it's Dan Bomis from KSL News Radio.
Okay, Dan, I was just going by the name. Go
Alexis
ahead.
had registered for this. Question for Representatives Handy and Harrison. Do you get the idea that anyone in Washington is actually listening? I mean, is the effort that you're making to bring awareness to this issue, are you optimistic you'll make a difference? Or is this just flying under the radar of the COVID-19 pandemic and you don't expect anything to change?
Ladies first, please.
Thanks for the question, Dan. You know, I sometimes wonder if Congress or Washington hears anything anyone says, but we have to continue to voice our concerns and fight for these issues that matter to Utah families. And top amongst the list is clean air and making sure that we're making smart policy that helps Utahns' health. And in this case, it helps their wallets, literally. So I'm going to continue to speak out. And I think with the gridlock we've seen in Washington, D.C., it makes what we do at the state level all the more important. And I am grateful that we continue to tackle these issues in a bipartisan manner in Utah. And I really, truly hope that those folks that represent Utahns at the federal level and also folks that represent all Americans will fight for these clean car standards. It matters to our health, it matters to our economy, it matters to our future.
Well, let me just add to that, Dan, and that is that Representative Harrison has articulated that extremely well. But let me just say that, you know, we have a little bit of a bully pulpit, and so we're happy to use it in something that is so critical to the health and economic vitality of our state. And I just don't understand why it would be necessary to adjust these clean car standards because they have been working so well, and we have such terrific challenges here in Utah, and we have been making progress. So why would you want to take a step back? So it would be not right for us that we don't speak out. And so gratefully, this forum has been provided for us, and we look forward to, frankly, the media telling the story about what we're talking about here this morning. So thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Next, we have Rick Aaron. Rick chatted his question, but Rick, we can unmute you and you could speak, or I can read your question as well if you prefer.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I just was wondering if the panelists could talk about the timing of this rollback, especially considering that the nation is focused on battling a pandemic at the time.
A question for anyone?
You
Take it away,
Dr.
Dr.
Dr. Moench.
Well, a cynic would say there's a hidden agenda of the Trump administration to try and slide this underneath the radar while the country is focused on the pandemic. I don't know how to explain it, the timing in any other way. I don't know how to explain the whole program to begin with, because as all these speakers have outlined, there just really isn't any justification for doing this. There's certainly no public health justification. There's no economic justification. Again, a cynic would say, well, this is a gift to the fossil fuel industry, and that's the only thing we can come up with. But the public really needs to know that we're talking about a nationwide program that has been extremely successful for decades in reducing the amount of pollution that we all experience, and why it would turn around and reverse course, especially under these circumstances, and especially when we know that air pollution is now one of the risk factors. You can think of it essentially as one of the risk factors that we know increases a person's risk of dying from the COVID-19 infection. So we can't explain it. I guess I'll let others try and weigh in on this, but we certainly can't come up with any sort of defense for this.
I would just add that the timing couldn't have been worse. They could have, would have, should have put this on hold for whatever, because, and just let the crisis pass, the health crisis pass. Hopefully it will pass, and then address it where people could really focus on it.
Thank you, speakers. Thank you, Mr. Aaron. I want to go to Amy O'Donoghue, Deseret News. Amy, you chatted your question, but we can unmute you so you can ask your question.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Amy, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just would like Representative Harrison to further elaborate on the comment that she made related to the economy and these clean car standards and the type of jobs that they help support. I think she mentioned 4,700 jobs in Utah. Just want more detail on that.
So we know that clean car technologies have created around 300,000 jobs nationally. And based on that history, the prediction is that Utah may see up to 4,700 new jobs based on these clean car technologies if the clean car standards are kept in place. Now, granted, these predictions were made prior to the worst recession we've seen since the Great Depression. So, those numbers may vary slightly, but the point is, why would we take steps backward in reversing the clean car standards and threaten the potential for these clean car jobs, these clean vehicle technology jobs that will add to the economic vitality of Utah at a time when we're in the worst unemployment we've seen in decades? It makes no sense.
Great. And
Hey,
next,
Can I add one thought there? Part of the analysis in the job creation from improving clean car standards steadily over the last several decades is the concept that because people are spending less money to fill up their cars, they have more money to spend on other aspects of the economy. And that has a ripple effect and a benefit that affects the entire economy at large. So the jobs that Representative Harrison refers to not only include clean car technology jobs, but also jobs throughout the economy because people have more money to spend elsewhere.
great. Thank you for that. Next, we're going to go to Lara Jones. Lara, I know you put your question in Q&A, but we can unmute you. Lara, are you still with us? And if so, your audio on your phone or your computer may be on mute.
Sorry about that, rookie mistake. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
So state lawmakers, by and large, present company excluded, seem to disregard the folks who contact them on these issues. I just don't see lots of movement, or they disregard them as rabble-rousers at Inland Port Board Authority meetings. What do you have to say to voters in this election cycle in terms of why their voice matters?
I'll chime in on that. My answer to that is voter.utah.gov. We need voters to be informed and engaged. And too often, the average person isn't being heard in our state or in our country. And this is an opportunity to hold elected officials accountable and make sure that when you vote, you're voting for folks that align with your values on fighting for these issues that matter to Utahns' health, that matters to our future, that matters to the future economy that we want here in Utah. And protecting the clean car standards and fighting for clean air is always a winning issue on those goals that we have in Utah.
Let me just add that, I haven't always been, I'm a native Utahn. We've had these inversions my whole life, but I never understood until I started to get educated that there is a dramatic and detrimental health effect to these terrible inversions. I never understood it. But now that I do understand it and others understand it well, and I go back to what Dr. Moench said, that you ask Utahns what they're most concerned about, and always air quality is in the top 2 or 3. It always is. And so as a part-time legislator, I thought to myself, what kind of a legacy could I walk away from this someday and say, maybe you did a little good. And I can't think of anything that would be more important than promoting the something for the health of our citizenry and also for the economic vitality of our state. So that's why I work in this. Now, I think that other legislators, I wish that they would understand how critical and important this is. And we're trying to educate them, right, Suzanne?
We are, but I agree with you, Representative Handy, and I think this is an opportunity for people to really get informed. And sometimes people say something, but vote another way in office, and we need voters to hold elected officials accountable at the ballot box, and registering to vote and then actually voting is critical to that.
Let me add a comment here. For at least several years, as others have mentioned, air pollution has consistently been in the top 3 issues of concern for Utah voters, and it's usually number 1. And so if that's the case, there's an obvious disconnect between voters' concern and who they end up voting for, because we end up with a legislature that doesn't give it the attention that it deserves. And you could say the same thing for all of our other elected offices. The fact that we have members of both political parties here this morning is a great sign, but we need to have the public start making the connection between what they value and who they vote for. And unfortunately, that seems to be a persistent disconnect.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lara. So we are at the top of the hour, and we've worked our way through all of our questions from members of the media. So I wanted to wrap up with a few remarks. Want to thank Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment for hosting the event. And I also want to thank all of our speakers for their time, expertise, and continued support for clean air and the clean car standards. Thank you to all the members who have joined us. I should note that the video recording of this event will be available on the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment Facebook page, and a link to that video will be sent out in the press release in the next 60 to 90 minutes. If you have any follow-up questions or requests for speaker interviews, please email me at kevincleancars@gmail.com. That's kevincleancars@gmail.com. And thank you again for this event, and have a good day.